This is James Cooper from module number 9, the case study, for AEP 855. Let's hop right in. So, let's go over the facts. What happened? Two students were involved in suspicious activity, J and D. J gave D an object that called for further investigation. D had a weapon on his person and was arrested for it. J confessed that the weapon was his, and he forced D to hold it. Both were then arrested. When and where did it happen? It happened at school, in the hallway. Who all was involved in the situation? James, the person who confessed that the weapon was his. David, the person who was forced to hold on to the weapon. Richard, he is administration. The school resource officer. James's parents, David's parents, and the classroom teacher, who first made the call about the situation. Were there any legal or ethical issues? Was anybody harmed? No, nobody had been physically harmed, but when it comes to bringing weapons to school, there's really only a matter of time before that happens. David, he was emotionally scarred from the incident, and he probably lost the faith of his parents and lost some of his reputation around school. James, he lost the faith that he was progressing in his reform to becoming a better student. This was 2 steps forward, 5 steps back. Administration, they faced mental anguish, damaged relationships with James by using an officer to get him out of class instead of going himself. And then he also risked damaging his reputation and career by destroying those expulsion papers for David. Does this action conflict with the law? Yeah, there's a zero tolerance policy in place with bringing weapons to school. And in certain states, having brass knuckles is a federal crime. Was there a breach of contract? Administration broke his contract to uphold the policy put in place by the DAEP. Disciplinary action was leveled unevenly in favor of David. And past records played a major role in discipline when expectations of the punishment were clear-cut. I believe that if you're going to discipline 2 students for the same thing, then they both need to suffer the same consequences. And the idea with the past records playing a major role. There are some instances where it's like a 3-strike rule. You make your third mistake, you're facing a more severe punishment. This was not the case. This was a 1-strike rule. This was zero tolerance. This was bringing a weapon to school, and both people who had possession of the weapon should have been expelled. That is what is lined out in disciplinary action. In a single sentence, what happened in this situation? Incidents of a critically serious nature involving 2 students occurred in school. Disciplinary action against the students was dealt unevenly. So yes, critically serious. Bringing a weapon to school, very serious problem. Action was not taken evenly against both students. So favoritism was shown. The facts in detail. The people, Jay, he is troubled, and while he has been improving in school, he has also been arrested and expelled before, and even his parents have lost hope. David, honor student, top of his classes, involved in school activities, and has a clean record up until this point. Administration was building a relationship with James and still considers him a kid ruined by the south side of town. David, on the other hand, has high hopes and dreams that could all be destroyed by this one incident. James's parents, they've given up hope. They see this as another chance for him to learn, but they already believe that he won't. The parents of David see their world is collapsing and that they failed their son. Couple things that we don't know is, who were the brass knuckles going to be used for? I think that's a pretty serious question that wasn't addressed in this case study. And then also, what is the relationship of the officer with the students involved and with the general population of the school? If it's a resource officer that nobody in the school knows, it gives a level of gravitas to the situation that wasn't there at the beginning. But if the resource officer is well known by everybody, well liked by everybody, and them getting somebody from class is not an unusual thing, that doesn't raise the stakes of the situation before anything's even been addressed. Where did this take place? School, medium-sized town, most likely large enough to have a south side. We don't know the exact size of the town, we don't know the income levels, and we don't know the race or ethnicity of the students involved. Programs, James, he's 15, poor grades, suspended multiple times. David, 13, honors classes, banned. Positively involved in school. Prioritizing the information. In this situation, an honor student was introduced, as far as we know, to illegal activity. This raises concerns for students who aren't as accomplished in school that they could also be involved in situations similar to this that the administration and the community don't know about. If the program is followed to the letter, it'll signify unity and discipline. But since discipline was not uniform, it shows that the organization might be fractured, and that it'll brew discontent among the students. While James, while this incident is not new to him, he has been making changes for the better in how he reacts to things at school, and that not being into consideration for this event, he'll see those changes as useless and futile, and so will the people who followed him, possibly not making those changes in the future to try to be better. David, he's an honor student who's caught with brass knuckles. This kind of mark on his record could damage his possibility for future education and employment, considering on what kind of punishment the state requires students to have, or people to have, for possession of brass knuckles. Administration, he violated the policies to favor one student over another. Southside students, they will see this as being biased against for punishments. Honor students will see that they have a free pass, at least where troubled students are involved. And the DAEP will see that their authority has been questioned, they may lose face, and they may even lose face with the community. Not all the stakeholders in the community were talked to, and not all could be talked to, but the most immediate ones were communicated with. The one question that really needs to be addressed, that I don't think gets enough focus on, who the brass knuckles were intended for and why. And I don't think this is that goes deeper into an investigation that I don't think you could have in front of both of those students. You'd have to separate them to really get to the root of the situation. But there is enough to know to make a preliminary decision on the simple facts that there was an incident that requires attention. But a full decision, I think, is going to require more information and collaboration with other educational and legal bodies. Doing nothing. Possible consequences for the students. Doing nothing. You might save David from having that mark on his record, and you might help James to see that his becoming a better student is working in his favor. But all the other students are going to see that two people brought a weapon to school and nothing happened, so they could bring a weapon to school. It's a little cynical, but I still believe in monkey see, monkey do. And they're going to expect similar no consequences to happen. Most comprehensive, both students are expelled. It falls in line with policy, with zero tolerance. A weapon was brought into school. For Jay, it's another day. He's going to probably lose interest in becoming a better student, and so will all of the Southside students. And David will have that expulsion on his record, and it could haunt him for the rest of his public education career, and even further, depending on how severe the consequences are on the state level on his police record. Option number 3, I think you need to look more towards a fluid discipline, which I'll get to in a little bit, that has more to do with an investigation and finding all the answers possible to come up with a cohesive discipline that is going to satisfy everybody involved. Maybe not the DAEP, but the parents, the students, and administration, to where the punishment does fit the circumstances. Pros and cons. For the doing nothing, yeah, you have little paperwork from administration. A con, though, is you start to lose control of your students and lose control of the school. It encourages the rule and law to be broken on school grounds, and eventually keeps rolling downhill, keeps growing and growing, dismissal of teachers and administration, depending on the severity before control is regained. By having the most comprehensive and both students being expelled, you're looking at a even-handedness and approach to the discipline, that the rules are being followed, that their zero tolerance policy is in effect and will be used. One of the cons for this, though, is, I would say that the main con for this is David, who made one very bad mistake, is going to have to live with that mistake for the rest of his life, most likely. It's not going to affect James very much because he's already had a very troubled past. David, on the other hand, first time offense, it's a little harsh, I still believe. Your best option, I think you're going to look at having to give both students a minimum of 5 days out of school suspension. They brought a weapon to school. They need to be removed from the rest of the student body while the investigation continues. This will give the school time to also find out more about the situation and keep both students away, with the understanding that expulsion, the 5 days, could be extended or upgraded to an expulsion depending the outcome of the investigation. But this means taking steps to solving the actual problem that led a student to bringing brass knuckles to school. The zero tolerance policies on the board, yeah, they also do a lot more harm than good and can make irreversible consequences for those who are in the wrong place in the wrong time scenario. If David was actually bullied into holding those brass knuckles, then wrong place, wrong time, and it's going to haunt him forever. I wouldn't rule out the question, though, that David asked James for the brass knuckles because he knew James could get a hold of them, and maybe David was being bullied. He's a smart kid, he's in band, he's a little small. Having a clean record doesn't always mean you're innocent. Having a smudged record doesn't mean you're always guilty. Section 9, implementing the plan. Reach out to the DAEP and talk about the zero tolerance procedure and how it forces kids who make mistakes to live with those mistakes for possibly their entire lives. It punishes those who make mistakes severely enough to where they're not going to really have a chance to see what happens when they can correct those mistakes. Use this case as a demonstration that by addressing the underlying issues, we can keep our students safe in school and give them the best chance to succeed. And then move on to the Board of Education to show how much that zero tolerance takes the power out of professionals who are trained, who are educated, who work with these students all the time, and places in the hands of people who are generally not qualified to make those decisions in the first place. I do understand that the way I worded this, but from my experience, the people in the school board do not always have the best ability to handle these situations. Our school board at our district, I don't think any of them have ever worked in a public school before, and I don't think any of them have seen the inside of a school building since they graduated high school. And so I don't think that they're very well equipped to deal with these kinds of situations, especially as frequently and as quickly as schools change. I love doing these case studies. I think they are a great way to look at possible solutions and other problems and compare them with others. And looking through other people's videos, I just see some of us have very different lines of thinking, and I think if we could bring that together and work together, our schools will be a lot more successful.